And he looked at me and he went, patted my knee and said, "It's just a rough cut, Joseph." and I thought, well, okay, you know, he's the master and it's in his hands. Next time I saw it, it was a totally different movie. It was all tight and paced and beautifully put together. And then I knew that it was a good movie. Then I saw it with the music. And nearly, you know, fell out of my seat. The music really wowed me. I'd never heard anything like that. I met Bernard Herrmann one day toward the end of the shoot, and I said, what size orchestra are you going to use? And he told me, and he said, it's going to be all strings. And I was just flabbergasted because I'd never heard of anybody doing a movie score with all strings. And when I heard it, of course, I realized what he had done. He had just taken everybody's guts and used them for music.
I worked with Bernard Herrmann on 2 films directed by Brian De Palma. One was called Sisters, and the other was Obsession. He had very interesting ideas about how to approach the music based on the content of the material. For instance, he's described his score for Psycho as a black and white score, only strings, no percussion, no brass, no wind, because he wanted to reflect the black and white stark quality of the picture. When I worked on Star Wars, we put in temp music for the entire film. And for the most part, we used classical music and not film music. We used The Rites of Spring by Stravinsky, the New World Symphony by Dvorak. We used The Planets by Holst. We used a variety of classical pieces. But there was one moment in the film we couldn't really find the right music for, and I thought of a cue from Psycho. And what it was when the Millennium Falcon had landed on the Death Star, the stormtroopers come aboard and search the ship, and they can't find anybody. As they're going out, the camera tilts down, and a hatch in the floor opens up, and Han Solo and Luke Skywalker and the rest of them pop up from under the floor. And the music that I played at that point was a cue from Psycho, a very famous 3-note motif, which I happen to have queued up here. This is the 3-note motif. And then the music continues from that point, but that opening 3-note signature was very famous as the theme from Psycho. And I put it in there, and John Williams, who wrote the score to Star Wars, had been a friend and colleague of Herrmann's, and when he wrote the score to the film, he wrote a cue to go at that point that used those exact 3 notes to begin. It was an homage to Herrmann.
Benny Herrmann's score for Psycho was brilliant, and in fact so much so that Hitch and I were sitting in the theatre when we were scoring the picture, and we came to the end where Tony Perkins comes down the steps into the basement and sees the skeleton mother right at the end of the picture, and that was silent. After we finished that reel, Benny came up to Hitch and said, well, you know, how do you like it? What do you think of it? And Hitch said, well, it's fine, Benny, except surely as Tony comes down those steps into the basement, you should repeat that wonderful theme that you had in the shower sequence of all the fiddles going down like that. What do you think? And Benny said, wonderful idea, Hitch. He was thrilled with the idea and said Hitch was absolutely right, and so we did that reel with the score.
My script ended where he says, why I wouldn't harm a fly, where the mother through him says, I wouldn't harm a fly. And that was it. That was the end of the movie for me. Hitchcock and George Tomasini, his editor, did this marvelous thing with the skull of his mother, almost subliminal. Some people didn't even see it really. And the car being pulled out. I think that was kind of a way to give you a return to the person that you lost, who was buried in that. And also to open up the thought that maybe there's some other cars in there.
We knew it was time for the film to go to the censors, the Hayes office, I think it was. So Hitch said, let's get Luigi Loraschi, who was the intermediary for the studio and the censorship, a very nice man, to look at the film and see if there are any problems with it. So immediately after we got the first cut, we had the screening for Hitch, Luigi, George Tomasini, the editor, his assistant, and me in the theatre at Universal. So we start running it, and Luigi laughs at Hitch's appearance in the film, which took place in the beginning of the film. And then we're watching everything. Then comes the shower sequence, and we're all sort of looking on placidly. We just stop, my God! So Hitch said, yes, Luigi, what is it? Luigi, I saw a breast. No, you didn't, Luigi, it's just in your dirty mind. You didn't see a breast at all.
Y tus trailers.
Yes, we'll run
Visita
it
mi
again.
canal.
So we ran it again. Well, Luigi, did you see a breast? No, but we're going to be in a lot of trouble, I think, with it. We talked about, we didn't. We made him realize that he was wrong, that he hadn't seen the breast, that it was a perfectly charming little Sunday afternoon treat, the shower sequence, and we sent it off with Luigi to the censor. We did have a few problems with the censor. They sort of said they didn't like Janet and her slip in the beginning, and a few odd things like that, but we tidied them all up.
My mother was the one who, when they saw the first print, the answer print that they were going to send out, she's the one that at the end of the picture, when they were all raving, said, oh, it's great. And she says, you can't send it out. And they said, well, why? What's the matter? She says, Janet Leigh takes a breath when she's supposed to be dead. She's the only one that had caught it. With all the people that had seen that over and over, she's the only. She had an unerring eye because she was an editor in England in the early days. And so she got to used to looking at things frame by frame, because you know, that's when they had it on the reels and they just turned it. It wasn't automatic, you know. And so they had to fix it up. They had a showing for the cast and some other people, and we saw it then, and I thought it was great. I really did.
Mother! Blood! Blood!
I think my reaction when I saw it was like everybody else's, because you get so, you know, just engrossed in the whole story. Because I never look at anything technically anyway.
When I saw it, and I saw it cut together, and I saw the boom, boom, and the music and everything, I absolutely went, I just was crazy. I mean, I really screamed. I've never taken a shower. I cannot take a shower, because it never dawned on me until that moment how vulnerable and defenseless one is. It never entered my head until I saw that.
The most fascinating part, which my father loved from the very beginning, was having Janet play that part, and then she's out, you know, first quarter of the movie.
One day we'd finished shooting, and Hitch said, you know, people who come in late to see Psycho will wonder, where's Janet Leigh? And they'll keep on waiting for her, and she'll be dead, and they won't know it. Well, what can be done about it? So he thought, while we were talking, and he said, you shouldn't allow people into the theatre after the film has started. They'll see Janet will be orderly and everyone will realize it. So I laughed. I didn't think it would be possible to tell theatre managers when to show the picture and when not to. And he convinced Paramount, the publicity, this was the way to start.
It was a great gimmick, if you want to call it a gimmick, because that the people had to get in and get down before the picture started, and that brought them in. And then when they left screaming, and some people and running out and during the scene, especially during the shower scene, which just added to the enthusiasm of the public wanting to see this picture.
Some journalists thought, well, we'll catch them out, we'll show this is just a publicity stunt. So they got hold of a woman who was pregnant and coached her what to say to the manager, and with her so-called husband. He went in and he said, look, my wife is pregnant, you can see, and but she wants to see Psycho. Let us in. Now the picture started, please. So the manager said, well, I'm very happy for you that she's pregnant, sir, but we can't allow her in the theatre. She's perfectly welcome to sit in my office until the next program starts, but can't come in the middle of the program.
Good afternoon. Here we have a quiet little motel.
The trailer for Psycho was done when we finished shooting. All the sets were saved and held on the stage, and we were all called back, I don't know, I think it was about a week later, and we spent one day, and it was a fun day because the strain of the movie was over, the schedule was done, and it was all in the can. And it was, looking back on that day, it was like a party day with Mr. H.
Of course, in a flash there was the knife, and in no time the victim tumbled and fell with a horrible crash. I think the back broke immediately and hit the floor. It's difficult to describe the way that the twisting of the well, I won't dwell upon it.
Talking of coming up with the idea for the trailer, doing a tour of the house and all this, that was Hitch's own idea. And also to treat it in a very droll fashion. Oh, look, I can't tell you what went on in this place. It's too terrible. This is where she... No.
This picture...
Terribly funny.
...has great significance. Because, let's go along to cabin number 1.
When Hitchcock walks in and pulls the shower curtain away, and reveals Vera Miles behind there instead of Janet Leigh, it was part of the fun that went on that day. Well, the release of Psycho was not critically acclaimed. In fact, the critics didn't, they poo-hooed it. They didn't think this was up to the standard of North by Northwest or To Catch a Thief or Vertigo or all the famous Hitchcock pictures.
I think the critics didn't like being made to see it in a theater. That pissed them off. They wanted to see it in the screening room like they always did, all by themselves or with their secretaries. And Mr. Hitchcock said no previews. And as a matter of fact, the critics had to see it on the day that it opened with the ordinary folk. And I'm convinced that we got a lot of bad reviews because of that. I think they were kind of irritated reviews. You could almost feel the irritation.
He was disappointed when a movie didn't get good reviews, because he knew how much time he'd spent on it. And I think he'd been a little spoiled very early on when he came here, when he had such great reviews, for Rebecca and some of the others, Suspicion, And I think that's, it bothered him.
Bosley Crowther of the New York Times said it was awful. And then later in the year picked it as one of the 10 best pictures of the year.
The audience for Hitch were the most important part of the movie making. On Psycho, he'd send me out to the different theaters to check with the manager. How did the audience go for this or that? What were the reactions as the audience came out of the theater? And I know that on Psycho, like on a roller coaster, you say, and they came out, and in all theaters they did that. They came up with a sense of tremendous enjoyment. This was a lovely evening they'd had watching these murders. And that's what mattered to him, to get the audience involved.
While I was writing it, it never occurred to me that an audience would yell at the screen, "Don't go down there," or give any kind of aid or comfort to the victim. I saw it completely with titles and everything at the same time that the audience was seeing it. And I was shocked, absolutely shocked. Could not believe that the audience would react like this. This felt like when I was a kid and watched serials on Saturday afternoon, and we yelled at the screen. But these were grown-ups doing it.
I feel very strongly that the reason that Psycho has endured is because of the restrictions that were put on us, and because Mr. Hitchcock had to come up with a suspense story without showing what, you know, today is normal. He allowed the audience to create what they thought they saw. And when the audience becomes a part of the creative process, they're not going to forget that.
And I think that's why his pictures are lasting today, because they weren't made for critics. You know, I'm sure he would love to have critical acclaim and all that, but he makes them for the audience.
Advance. In Cross Plugs, theater trailers made the point again in another way.